Okay, third time's a charm. Your reaction to today's verdict?
I hope you can hear me, Jennifer. Can you?
Yes.
Okay, so sorry about that to all viewers. I can tell you, Jennifer, that this verdict, which I've been watching since 9:30, is quite shocking to me. And I'm not often shocked by these kinds of verdicts in high or low profile cases. When you look at the analysis that Judge DeLuca went through, all of the problems with the brother's testimony, all of the things he accepted about Devontae Miller, it's quite shocking to me, and I emphasize shocking to me, that one brother received a complete pass, including on the obstruction of justice public mischief charges. And it is a tremendous win for Michael Theriault, the off-duty police officer, who's now convicted of a simple assault. That could be as simple, Jennifer, as me just giving you a small push in the studio if you and I had an argument. It is a very minor charge in the context of this case. So I can tell you, even as a criminal defense lawyer, and I'll be open about this, I'm glad that the presumption of innocence still matters. I'm glad that proof beyond a reasonable doubt matters. I'm glad that Judge DeLuca, a very thoughtful and careful judge who knows more about the evidence here than anybody else talking about it, that if he says probably guilty, but he's not sure, that's the way our system works. But I can tell you, Jennifer, that if I'm somebody concerned about Devontae Miller or how that eye went missing, it seems still strange to me that this young man will never be able to see out of his left eye, but there wasn't even a scratch on either brother.
And so, Ari, I think a lot of people are questioning this verdict for that very reason. Devontae Miller's eye was hit so hard, it burst. And even if he was guilty or of breaking into cars, as the brothers maintained, even though Devontae Miller denied it, does that justify a beating of this severity?
Well, it definitely doesn't. So even if Devontae Miller would have come into court, Jennifer, and said, I was robbing cars, I was going to rob houses, which he didn't admit to, but the judge said you were robbing cars, that doesn't give the Theriault brothers, off-duty cop or not, no citizen's arrest, no I'm a cop, no put your hands behind your back, stop police. Remember, this was all covered up for 2 or 3 months until the SIU, the Special Investigations Unit, became involved. So again, Justice DeLuca had to make a very, very tough judgment call. He knows what's going on outside the courthouse in Oshawa. He knows the concern about Devontae Miller. He talked about anti-Black racism and racial issues, even as part of the evidence, explaining why Mr. Miller might have even lied about what he was doing that night. But I'm just having great difficulty, Jennifer, and I'm going to read the decision because it's not clear to me the reason we get to assault yet versus not aggravated and Christian gets a complete walk. But we still live in a system, and Jennifer, this system will not be with us long. That's my concern. Where accusations are proof of guilt, where we want judges to just snap their fingers. For 4 hours, Justice DeLuca, a former criminal defense lawyer that represented young men just like Devontae Miller and many, many indigenous people. So the concern and the criticism of him is unfounded. But when you look at the recitation of the evidence, including the 911 call, Jennifer, and this is the little piece to me that's critical, that in the background, when 911 is called, when Miller is wanting help, you hear Christian Theriault in the background going, you messed with the wrong cars. That sounds a little street justice to me, and this man is now blind in his left eye for the rest of his life.
And so, despite the judge acknowledging there's been a heightened awareness of police brutality and racism in terms of how Black members of the community are treated by police, what was his justification in terms of this verdict? And I know you say you're struggling with it, and you're a lawyer, and I'm not, but does this come down to a he said versus they said, and he believed the two brothers?
You ask a very good question, Jennifer, because a lot of people watching this who aren't intimately familiar with the case would think this was a contest between Devontae Miller and the two brothers. We had other pieces of evidence here that the judge went painstakingly through, that Mr. Miller was not able to defend himself from the beating, that he's looking for help along the side of a home, that a fire chief, one of the neighbors who's not friends with the brothers, sees the two brothers, one of them wailing down on Mr. Miller while Mr. Miller is underneath them. you have the 911 call that I just mentioned, which is Christian Theriault saying, you messed with the wrong cars. What does that suggest? Does that suggest self-defense, or does that suggest the brothers leaving the garage to get what they thought was justice? And remember, Jennifer, they never yell, stop police. What does that tell the audience? If they wanted to just arrest them, put them in cuffs, that's a different story. But I'll tell you, Jennifer, I have to read the decision. It is surprising to me. Kudos to the defense lawyers for earning their keep. That's the way our system works. And let me just say again, Jennifer, well, livid about it. I can see it on my screen to the right that Toronto is absolutely apoplectic in many places about this decision. You have a judge who was a former defense lawyer representing young men, 4.5 to 5 hours of meticulous analysis. And if the judge says our system still works, that the courtroom of public opinion doesn't determine what I do, but you have to get me to being sure of the charges, that's not necessarily a bad day. But Jennifer, if you want me to be very open about this, it still does confuse me a bit, this decision, because maybe my heart goes out to Devontae Miller because of the injury he suffered. And it all, to me, seems completely avoidable from that night to what's the purported cover-up for months after, where it's never even reported that Devontae loses his eye.
And so, Ari, this was, as you mentioned, a meticulous and methodical reading of a verdict over 4 hours. Do you have faith that once you get a chance to go through it, there is something in there that will back up the judge's verdict?
I think there probably will be, because Justice Joseph DeLuca, I'm going to take the position, is much smarter than me and 97% of probably the most talented criminal lawyers and Crown attorneys in Canada. Nobody heard the evidence in a courtroom day to day more than him. Nobody understands proof beyond a reasonable doubt more than him. Anybody who's hating on the system today, don't take my word for it. Google who Joseph DeLuca is in his career, and you will think that you are in the hands of a very, very well-respected, caring judge. This was not somebody who's brand new to the rodeo. This is somebody whose entire life has been in criminal law. So do I expect to read something that goes, okay, said there's a lot of smoke, but he can't get to fire? That's essentially the standard of being sure. But for 4 hours, Jennifer,
yeah,
I'm listening to all the evidence that suggests the Theriault brothers are lying, that Devontae Miller is telling the truth about the horrible events of that night, but for the cars. I'm looking at Judge DeLuca talk about the civilian witnesses who had no skin in the game and said, we saw 2 men piling down onto him. We have Devontae Miller walking across a house bloody, knocking on a door to get help. You know, I am a criminal defense lawyer, but I never lose my human beingness, not that any criminal defense lawyer does. So, yes, do I think when I read the 60, 90 pages of it, I will see something that's more of an aha moment for me? Yes. But I can tell you, Jennifer, I absolutely sympathize with everybody out there that says this is seemingly a curious decision of just a simple assault, like a little shove,
yeah,
when this young man has lost his left eye. But our system works based on proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And if Joseph DeLuca says he couldn't get to that standard, that's not a bad day for our system.
Okay, well, we will leave it at that for now. We're going to have lots more on this decision because, like you, Ari, I'm especially, interested in the finding of assault versus aggravated assault, never mind obstruction. So lots to parse in this. I appreciate your insight as always. Thank you.